If you walked into an Amish pantry right before a storm, you might think it looks too simple to matter. No flashy labels, no expensive survival kits, no panic. Just plain jars, sacks, crocks, and root cellar shelves. But that quiet pantry can feed a family longer than most modern kitchens. And that is because Amish families have learned something a lot of people forget. In hard times, the best food is not the fanciest food. It is the food that stores well, stretches far, and keeps everybody steady. And if you stay with me, you will see why these 20 simple foods matter so much more than people realize. Where I come from, we do not think of this as some trendy prepper habit. We just call it being ready. Winter comes, crops fail, money gets tight, roads get bad, neighbors get sick. Life has always had hard seasons, so the pantry is built for real life, not for show. And the first thing almost every careful family keeps is potatoes. Potatoes are filling, cheap to grow, easy to cook, and they can turn into breakfast, supper, or side dishes without much fuss. Fried potatoes, boiled potatoes, potato soup, potato cakes. You can feed a table 100 different ways with one humble crop. Right beside that, or at least somewhere close but not too close, you will usually find onions. If potatoes are the body of a meal, onions are the soul. A little onion can wake up beans, noodles, meat, soup, gravy, or skillet bread. And that matters in a frugal kitchen, because when food is plain, flavor is what keeps people from feeling poor. The old wisdom with storage matters too. Good keepers know onions need cool, dry air, and the families who understand food storage know not everything belongs in one pile just because it all came from the garden. Then comes cabbage, and this one is bigger than most people think. A head of cabbage lasts a long time, costs very little, and feeds more people than it looks like it should. You can fry it with butter, simmer it in soup, shred it fresh, or turn it into something even more valuable later. Cabbage is one of those foods that proves frugal eating is not about deprivation. It is about making one thing do the work of three. Fresh vegetable now, cooked side dish later, fermented food after that. That is how a careful pantry earns its keep. Carrots are another quiet staple that never gets enough respect. They hold well, they work in broth, they sweeten a stew without needing extra sugar, and they can be canned or stored for cold weather. In a tight season, foods that play more than one role are worth their weight. Carrots can go into chicken and noodles, pot roast, vegetable soup, pickles, even baked goods. When a kitchen depends on what is on hand instead of what is on sale this week, carrots are the kind of food that keeps showing up because they make everything around them better. Beets may not be everybody's favorite, but in an old-fashioned pantry, they are gold. They store well, they pickle beautifully, and they bring color and sharp flavor to a table that might otherwise get heavy and brown in winter. A pantry is not just about calories, it is also about appetite. It is about keeping food interesting enough that people still want to eat well when the weather is ugly and the days are long. That is why pickled beets and beet dishes have stayed around so long. They wake up the whole meal. And then there are apples. This one surprises people because they think of apples as a snack, but in a careful home, apples are far more than that. Apples become sauce, butter, pie filling, dried slices, and cider. They are a dessert, a breakfast, and sometimes the sweet thing that lifts everyone's mood when the rest of supper is simple. Old storage wisdom matters here too. Apples keep well in the cold, but they should not be stored right beside vegetables like potatoes, because ripening fruit gives off gas that can shorten storage life. That little detail tells you everything about an Amish pantry. It is not random. It is thoughtful. Now let us talk about dried beans, because this is where the pantry starts getting serious. Beans are one of the cheapest proteins a family can keep. They sit quietly on a shelf, ask for very little, and turn into a meal that sticks with you. Pinto beans, navy beans, lima beans, soup beans, whatever the family uses, dried beans are the kind of food that makes hard times less frightening. If meat is short, beans carry the load. If money is thin, beans still show up. If you know how to season a pot well, nobody leaves the table hungry. Flour is another one you will almost always find, not because it is glamorous, but because flour means independence. If you have flour, you are not just holding one food. You are holding bread, biscuits, dumplings, noodles, pie crust, pancakes, gravy, and dozens of ways to stretch what little else you have. A pantry with flour can recover from a lot. When people say old farm kitchens could make a meal out of almost nothing, flour is usually one of the reasons. It binds, thickens, rises, stretches, and fills. It is one of the biggest bargain foods in the house. Cornmeal belongs right there with it. Cornmeal is hearty, cheap, and deeply practical. It turns into cornbread, mush, fried cakes, and simple sides that can carry soup or beans without costing much at all. And that is part of the genius in a frugal kitchen. Not every meal has to impress. Some meals just have to hold a family together through the week. Cornmeal does that well. It gives warmth, texture, and comfort, and it does it without asking for expensive ingredients. Oats are another pantry food that earns trust fast. A sack of oats can become breakfast for days, filler for baking, or a way to stretch meatloaf and other dishes when you need to make a little go farther. And oats do something else that matters in a crisis. They are gentle. When people are stressed, sick, tired, or stretched thin, simple food matters. A warm bowl of oats on a cold morning is not fancy, but it steadies people. It starts the day without draining the pantry. Sugar may seem too ordinary to mention, but in a real pantry it is not there just for sweets. Sugar preserves. Sugar helps make jams and jellies. Sugar turns fruit that would spoil fast into something that lasts months on a shelf. It also keeps morale up, and that matters more than people admit. In tough seasons, a little sweetness can calm a house. A spoonful in oatmeal, a jar of jam opened in winter, a simple pie on a Sunday afternoon, that is not waste. That is one more way to make sure hard times do not take everything from you. Salt is even more important, and maybe more important than most people realize. Salt seasons plain food, yes, but it also helps in pickling, curing, and preserving. In an old-fashioned kitchen, salt is not just an ingredient. It is a tool. If your pantry is full of food but none of it tastes like much, people get tired of eating it. Salt is what helps simple food stay welcome on the table. And when a family relies on what it has instead of running to the store, that little bit of seasoning becomes a very big deal. Honey is another old favorite, and for good reason. Properly stored honey keeps an incredibly long time, and even when it crystallizes, it is still usable. That is the kind of sweetness a careful home trusts. You can stir it into tea, spread it on bread, bake with it, or use it when the house needs something soothing. Honey feels like comfort, but it also works like security. It is one of those foods that never looks dramatic on the shelf, yet people are always glad to see it there. Then there is lard, and this is where modern kitchens often lose an old lesson. You can have all the grain and vegetables in the world, but if you do not have cooking fat, your pantry gets harder to use. Lard fries potatoes, browns cabbage, makes pie crust tender, crisps cornbread, and turns scraps into a meal that tastes complete. Old farm cooks understood this deeply. Fat is not just richness, it is function. It helps you cook what you stored. And in a frugal home, anything that prevents waste is valuable. Canned tomatoes are one of the strongest pantry anchors there is. Once tomato season hits, careful families put them by in every form they can manage. Whole tomatoes, sauce, salsa, paste, juice, something always goes on the shelf. And the reason is simple. Tomatoes become the base for soup, stew, chili, casseroles, and quick suppers when fresh produce is gone. A jar of tomatoes can wake up beans, meat, rice, noodles, and vegetables. It turns basic ingredients into real meals, and that is exactly what a crisis pantry is supposed to do. Canned green beans may sound modest, but they are a classic for a reason. Green beans are common in garden rows, common in jars, and common on winter tables because they are familiar, useful, and easy to pair with almost anything. A good pantry does not just store food that lasts. It stores food people will actually eat over and over without complaint. That matters, because the more dependable the food, the easier it is to build meals without stress. And green beans belong in that dependable group. Pickles matter more than outsiders think. People laugh at them like they are just a side snack, but a jar of pickles can rescue a dull meal. Sharp, salty, sour food cuts through heaviness and brings life back to the plate. Cucumbers preserved as dill pickles or bread and butter pickles have been pantry favorites for generations because they make simple food feel finished. When supper is beans, bread, and leftovers, a pickle on the side can make the whole thing feel more satisfying than it has any right to. And now we come back to cabbage in its most powerful form, sauerkraut. This is one of the smartest foods in the whole pantry. It takes a cheap vegetable and turns it into something with bold flavor and long keeping power. Sauerkraut can sit in crocks or jars and wait until a winter meal needs life. It pairs with potatoes, sausage, pork, and simple suppers that need a bright edge. More than that, it is proof of a deeper Amish habit. Waste less, transform more. Do not just store food, improve it. Jams and preserves deserve their place too. Strawberry, peach, blackberry, raspberry, apple, whatever grows well and comes in heavy, a lot of it ends up in jars. That is not just tradition for tradition's sake, it is smart use of abundance. A fruit crop comes all at once. Preserves let a family hold on to that season and keep using it. And again, there is an emotional side people overlook. A pantry should feed the spirit a little too. Bread with jam can turn an ordinary morning into something people remember kindly. And if a family really wants peace of mind, canned meat is one of the biggest differences between feeling stocked and truly being stocked. Chicken, beef, pork, venison, whatever is available and safely preserved, canned meat gives speed, protein, and flexibility when time or fuel is short. That matters in a crisis. Meat already cooked and ready to go can turn a jar of tomatoes and a handful of noodles into supper in no time. It can turn potatoes and onions into a full meal. It can take a pantry from surviving to functioning. What makes all 20 of these foods powerful is not just that they last, it is that they work together. Potatoes need onions, beans want salt, flour needs fat, tomatoes wake up meat, cabbage becomes kraut, fruit becomes jam. Nothing stands alone. That is the real lesson. An Amish pantry is not built around random stockpiling. It is built around useful relationships. Every shelf supports another shelf. Every jar supports another meal. That is why it looks plain, but performs so well. And I want to say one honest thing before we finish. Not every Amish home stocks the exact same foods in the exact same amounts. Communities differ, farms differ, families differ. But the pattern stays familiar. They keep what is practical. They preserve what is in season. They choose food that feeds many people for a fair cost. And they do not depend on the store to solve every problem. That is the part worth paying attention to, especially now when so many homes are full of food that somehow still does not make a meal. So when people ask how Amish families stay calm when prices jump, weather turns, or the world gets shaky, this is the answer. They trust simple food. Potatoes, onions, cabbage, carrots, beets, apples, dried beans, flour, cornmeal, oats, sugar, salt, honey, lard, canned tomatoes, canned green beans, pickles, sauerkraut, jams, and canned meat. Nothing flashy, nothing fake. Just real food that stores well, stretches far, and shows up when life gets hard. If you want a pantry that actually protects your family, start there. Quiet shelves, useful food, and no wasted motion. And the truth is, that kind of pantry does more than get you through a crisis. It gives you something people are hungry for now more than ever. It gives you peace. Because when supper is covered, tomorrow feels lighter. When the shelves are steady, the house feels steady. And when simple food is enough, fear loses some of its grip. That may be the most valuable thing in the whole pantry.